Shams reporting for ESPN and its family of networks that Gregg Popovich will no longer be the coach of the San Antonio Spurs and that he's going to go full-time into the role of team president. The, as he refers to him appropriately, iconic Popovich, Hall of Famer, the all-time winningest coach in NBA history. He is no longer going to be the coach. And as we all know, the idea of Gregg Popovich, known belovedly in the NBA circles and Spurs circles as Pop, would be the head coach to shepherd Victor Wembanyama into his greatness after he did such for Tim Duncan and this franchise with the Admiral in a 29-year stretch for Gregg Popovich. Wow. It was known as, around the NBA circles, what's meant to be, right? It was meant to, obviously many other NBA franchises would be like, what do you mean meant to be? We would have loved to have Wembanyama, but when the Spurs wound up, it's just like, oh, yeah, makes sense. Here we go again.
Yep.
And who better to shepherd this brilliant, what looked to appear to be unicorn, monstrously large man who can shoot threes, bring the ball up, play defense. Who better to show the ropes of the NBA than to this young man than Popovich? But it's only going to be 1 year for Gregg with Victor Wembanyama. As we all know, the man who's been with this team since taking over as the interim in December of 1996 for Bob Hill, you remember? Mm-hmm. After the Spurs won only 3 of their first 18 games and went 3-15, let's go to the bench and give Gregg Popovich the role. And everyone knew him as an assistant to Larry Brown, and then he had a brief stint under, the great coach Don Nelson with Golden State, and he took over the team.
And Rich, I'm old enough to remember when people were like, who's Popovich? He's the GM. Like, I can remember there was like pushback at that time.
Of course. And then they wound up, as you know, not performing very well under Popovich that season to finish up, and wound up with the number 1 overall pick and took Tim Duncan, yada, 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 22 consecutive playoff seasons later. At least 50 games in 18 straight of those years. And 5 championships. The man's in the Hall of Fame. And as we all know, he suffered a stroke that caused him to sit out this year, or at least hope that he could come back at some point this year after suffering a mild stroke on November 2nd. And then, as Shams pointed out in his article, on February 27th, he had an emotional meeting with the Spurs saying that he didn't think he'd be returning to the coaching role this season, aiming for next season. A medical incident on April 15th at a local San Antonio restaurant caused a scare, but everybody said he'd been feeling much better and had been quite present at the team facility throughout the rest of this campaign, in which the Spurs made a bold move for De'Aaron Fox at the trade deadline and have seemingly set things up for the future for Popovich to return, but it's not going to happen. And I'll just say this. I mean, what he has meant to the Spurs franchise, what he has meant to basketball as a whole. As we know, he's been the head coach of the U.S. men's national basketball team, and for the Tokyo Olympics, where the U.S. won its 4th consecutive gold medal. He got a 5-year contract extension in 23, which made us all think that it was just going to continue on into a 4th decade on the bench for the San Antonio Spurs. But what he has meant, and the other coaches he has set up for success, and the other players that he has affected and whose lives he has changed, and also his voice. The guy, as you know, suffered no fools ever. His chit-chats in-game with sideline reporters are the stuff of legend, but a very, again, from everybody who's known him, warm man, red wine lover, but a guy who will use his platform to talk about things other than basketball and talk about life, democracy, this country, what it should stand for, and just damning all the torpedoes and running out of F's to give. His voice in that role will be missed. And I do hope he is, in fact, well enough to be the full-time president of this team and continue on in a capacity that does affect wins and losses, more in the wins column for the San Antonio Spurs. So just wanted to say that. And wish the Spurs organization the best of luck as, you know, they move into the draft lottery again with Wembanyama hopefully coming back healthy. And then there's the idea of what they're going to do at the coaching spot. And I'm sure that will be addressed sooner rather than later. Catch the Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.